Hey, welcome to episode 70 of the Potty C. This week, Max is back and Dorky
Yay.
is gone. He's in
Also,
MDI
yay. Let's
prison.
go. He's definitely not here right now listening to us. Woo!
So yeah, we'll see if we can trigger him to tap out of his key and unmute here, but we're gonna do the episode largely without him this week, which is okay because we never needed him anyways.
Yeah, we didn't need him.
Yeah, exactly. So this week we have a couple of pieces of news that you've missed. You've just been like full AFK for a couple weeks. How was it? How was vacation? It's kind of
Full
rare to
AFK.
take a full vacation as a creator.
It's also the first. It was interesting. It's the first time that I think since I've started like grinding the streaming content creator thing that I've taken a vacation longer than like 4 or 5 days, because you know everything that goes along with that. It's just like kind of terrifying. Anytime you're not streaming, you could be farming primes or whatever, and it's just like really nerve-wracking to like just take time off because you could maybe never, you just think, oh, I'll never get it back, right? Something like that. But yeah, no, it was fun. Had a lot of fun. I met my girlfriend's family. She met mine. Went to the Kentucky Derby. Spent some time in New York. Got a little sick at the end, but now I'm better from that. But I've missed basically everything in the past. I think almost full 2 weeks in WoW, including I think the day I was at the airport flying to Kentucky was when our interview went live with Ian.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, this would have been great. That's also just the most iconic, like the reason you never want to like schedule things as a creator is you don't actually know when things are happening. So you want to like be available. So like literally the thing that I would want to do, it's like that's the day and we have no idea when it's coming out, right? Like we filmed it a month ago, but you know, who knows when that's coming out. I'm assuming you guys talked a little bit about that last week, but we can probably bounce some ideas. I'm sure we're gonna have to find some stuff to talk about today anyway. But I'd like to be filled in on a few of those things, and I'd also like to hear your thoughts on it if it's not too repetitive for them. We also have the MDI, our favorite viewer topic, which has been going on, and I unironically do want to talk about that very briefly, just because I want to hear how the new like rule banning format has turned out. But that's just for me personally. Maybe we can bury it later, so like the people that are just gonna lose it don't have to hear about it.
That's right. We also have player housing. I don't know if you've seen this, but there was a player housing info drop today as the time of recording this, and
oh no,
it featured another set of dev interviews. I actually got to do another one, so you've missed 2 of my dev interviews coming out since.
Oh, cool! Wait, you did
vacation.
You did when?
Yeah.
Wait, when you were down there? Same
no,
time?
So this it was actually a couple days. It was right after PAX in Boston.
Yeah,
They
I knew you went to that.
I didn't actually go to PAX, but I
up.
went on Monday to the Blizzard Boston offices with a bunch of other WoW creators, some of whom were also there for PAX, and some of whom I think flew in, around the same time as me. But yeah, so it was like me, Taliesin, Preach, some Final Fantasy people, Soul So Breezy, and then like a couple of game reporters. And
Wait,
we got
which
to
Final
actually
Fantasy people?
Zeppla and Lamatod. So like,
I love Lamatod. Yeah, Lamatod's
yeah.
sweet. I don't know, not to disparage Zeppla. I just don't know her. Yeah, sorry. Just like, just ignore the other one. Sorry.
I hadn't met either of them before this, and they're both really cool.
Yeah, Lamatod's a great guy.
It's always really cool to get to meet other creators and stuff. But yeah, so we got to play with the player house. Like we got to play an alpha build of the player housing stuff, and then we got to do like some dev interviews and things. So, and then I also, dude, on the flight back, one of my sinuses got a little blocked, and then I a little sniffly or whatever. And then on the descent, oh man, you were in
hell.
I was in pain. I thought I was gonna die. Turns out that's just kind of a thing that can happen if you ever have a sinus getting blocked a little bit on an airplane, it's going to be over for you on the landing.
Okay, not to one up you, but I did get food poisoning on Sunday. It was like an hour before I went on like a 6.5 hour flight, and having food poisoning on a plane, like legit food poisoning. I thought maybe I had it when I was like younger in life. I don't remember at some point. I've just said like, oh yeah, I had food poisoning. I was just like making it up. Like my stomach hurt, right? Getting real food poisoning, if you all know about that life, holy moly, that shit sucks. And it was on a plane too. So I was spare the details, but it was brutal. So you had that plane flight, you did the housing thing,
Yeah.
you did an alpha build of the house. Well, okay, forget the plane flight. How did you feel about the actual content?
I think it was like 95th percentile of what I was expecting their housing to look like. Like it was, the tool was nice. It was like incomplete. There's obviously, it was like an alpha build, but the stuff that was there was like really good. It was really easy to play with, and it did all the things I wanted to. And like the kind of goal they're going with is not having annoying restrictions on what you can do. So if you have an idea of something you want to do with it, like you can do that, which is really nice compared to, there are some games that are a lot more like annoying or a harder to use tool, and it did really well on that metric. So I don't know. I mean, I've been optimistic since the Blue Post, because the Blue Post have a lot of the philosophy.
The Blue Post have been really good,
been really encouraging. Yeah. So I would say they've lived up to the philosophy so far.
I'm surprised
it's coming out in midnight, so it's coming out next expansion.
Yeah, like pretty soon-ish.
Pretty soon-ish, yeah.
Right?
We don't know when that's going to be, but I think word on the street, conventional wisdom is, it feels like they probably wouldn't want to do another Fated season after how the last one was sort of poorly received, and it also
agree
is either hard confirmed or soft confirmed, or maybe not even confirmed, but everybody thinks that this next raid is going to be the last one of the expansion, and it's like we're not going back to the 4 raid.
I mean, I think there's, not to do a huge tangent, but I think it's overwhelmingly assumed that is the case. Yeah. There's so many. It would be crazy for them to do that.
Yeah, so we might be in midnight, this calendar year potentially, right? We don't know, but that means housing is going to be kind of soon, and it's definitely one of those things where like there are years and years. There are clearly is a lot of ideas that would make it even cooler, and they're definitely not going to have time to do all of them before it comes out. But if they just extrapolate forward the version that they have to when it comes out, it's going to be huge. And it's going to be huge even if you're somebody who doesn't care about housing at all. It's going to be one of those things where like it can revitalize the game and get a bunch of people who aren't currently into WoW, which is a good thing for everybody. I've been on the player housing is what they should spend dev time on train for ages, and I feel pretty vindicated by how like sick the version that I got to play with was.
Yeah, I'm surprised they even did it. Like, okay, so you know how like the test, like they showed it early. I feel like player housing is something you have to get so right, and the first impression has to be so good. And if it was not good, how memeable it would be that like, WoW finally does this thing they should have done forever ago, and it's bad. I think it shows a lot of confidence that they were willing to show it this early. You said we could be at midnight this calendar year. I think that's like, I mean, maybe you do too. I think that's like unlikely, but like that's like the extreme end.
Yeah, that's like I suspect like early next year is probably the
like spring,
average launch time from here, something like that. But
well, it's not the average. Like the average launch time for a new expansion would be like next end of summer or fall, and I think it's definitely coming before that.
I guess like if I was betting on it, that would be where I draw the line, right? The like over under line would be like April 2026 or something.
Yeah,
March.
Same.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it shows a lot of confidence that they're willing to even show you an early part of this. I mean, like most things that are getting like expansion features, it's probably been in development for like a pretty long time. But if you liked it, then I'm cool with it. It's basically one of the best things that could happen to WoW, because it is a collector's kind of content, but also it's something that's going to encourage them to go and do other collecting type things. So it's going to kind of just involve the whole game, which is great, so yeah, big fan. I'm glad you liked it. And wait, so you did multiple dev interviews about it? Like you got to talk to them about
it? There was like all the creators that were there got to do like a individual dev interview, and then there was also like a roundtable one. So it was sick. I ended up teaming up with Preach for a dev interview. We because he had to get recording supplies, and I didn't have as good recording supplies, but it turns out that it actually helped because some of his microphones broke, so we got to use my shitty backup audio.
Does he have better recording supplies?
So it worked out well that we teamed up, because Esfand was the only other one who like recorded his interview, and obviously he had his like actual camera guy there, and so obviously that was high quality. But then all the other people were just like writing down notes and stuff. But we've got the high quality interview with Esfand and the devs, and then the low quality interview with me and Preach and some devs, and then a bunch of like written interviews for, because like GameSpot and stuff had their guy there, which it's kind of surreal to be like in playtest room for some game feature with like reporters from the GameSpot and stuff.
Oh,
and then,
interesting. That's weird.
Yeah, it was weird. It was cool though.
Did you get to talk to them at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, like and some of the like MMO reporters knew of me or knew me, which is always super weird. Yeah, like
that's sweet.
But yeah, I don't know. It was sick. It was really fun. Even though I was there for like 11 hours from plane land to plane take back off. So it was a long day, a little 6-hour flight both ways.
When was that?
It was Monday. So I flew out Sunday. I got like a Sunday red eye, and then came back on a Monday red eye.
Then put in that work.
Yeah, because they also wanted me to go to PAX, but I was casting the MDI that weekend, so I couldn't.
Working for them.
Yeah, exactly. Which I was like, okay, I can't come to the PAX part, but the reason I can't come is because I'm casting for your game.
I'm a good employee.
You should still invite me to the housing thing, and so they said yes. So
yeah, you were a great person to get for the housing thing too. I think because you are going to be like the prime audience of who's that's like you're going to interact with that a lot, and also I just think you're someone of the community that people know a lot about, which is usually like high-end players that end up at least streaming wise, and you are also going to be one of those people, the few of them that really, really care about this in the game. So good, sweet. Housing, love housing.
Yeah,
I'm going to watch that
awesome.
video later.
Okay, so then we also have our interview though, which was with Ian, which I think had a lot of stuff that will be more relevant to more of our audience. Because I imagine that of our audience, there's going to be some people who are like, "Yeah, housing isn't for me" or whatever. Like, this is a casual system, which
I think it's great for the game, but like I don't care about housing.
Right, which is totally fine, and there will be a lot of people in the high end community that it's just not for. But something that everybody in the high end community does care about is add-ons and stuff, because that's like the core of how we're interacting with WoW. And basically,
before we go there though, Dorky, what are your thoughts about housing? Ooh, seems to be a little sheepish today. Okay, moving on to the interview.
Okay, on to the interview. Yeah, add-ons. So there's kind of two parts of the interview, right? It was like the one button thing, and then add-on philosophy in general.
Well, how did it turn out? So
they basically launched like all 40 minutes of it. It was crazy.
The whole they just like cut the whole interview and just launched the whole thing.
Yeah, so I think we recorded maybe an hour's worth of stuff, and they cut it down to 40 minutes or something.
Yeah,
so
yeah, guys, if you did not, we were talking all morning. We woke up, had breakfast at the hotel, and we were like getting shown around Blizzard, and we were like, what is this going to be? Is this like, do they want to do a potty C? Do they want to do like a little interview thing? It's called a Wowcast. Most Wowcasts are like heavily scripted, like get across the information kind of thing. And then we talked to Ian, and he was like, yeah, let's just like talk about add-ons. We're like, okay, cool. We can guys, we've been yapping our whole lives. Like we were born for this. But I wasn't sure like how they were going to deliver the content, like if they were going to edit it to be like more information-y, but they actually did let Ian just cook on there for like 40 minutes about add-ons and stuff. And I want to hear your takes on it, but I think a lot of the response was pretty, at least in the community then. It's probably died off a little bit by now, like by the time I got back, but most times things are announced for the people who are never going to interact with it at all just like hate it for some reason. Like this large group of people that just absolutely hates LFR and thinks it shouldn't be in the game, and it doesn't hurt them in any way, but they're just like, no, it's so bad. I'll tell you why it's bad. I've never heard a credible reason why it's actually bad for the game, by the way, but like that's a big thing. There's just, I feel like so many people that are never going to interact with basically anyone who's using these things are just like, this is so bad for the game, and it just doesn't matter to them. And then I bet they don't even think about it now any day, but like it was just the thing that day to get enraged about.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different like thought processes that led to people with that negative reaction. One of it's just like, okay, this is not what the game is about, and like if you can't do the core part of the game or don't want to do the core part of the game, why are they spending time making the game for you? Which I think is pretty short-sighted. Like, not to mention accessibility concerns, but just if somebody doesn't
Dude.
wants to.
Well,
Which I
what
think the
is the
accessibility
game?
concern.
What is the game? Like, to
Yeah,
them, what they're saying is like gameplay, like playing your character, that is the game. But
right.
actually, to so many people, that is the smallest part of the game for them. Like WoW PvE gameplay doesn't drive them to log on during the day like it does me and you, but they play a lot more WoW than a lot of us. They just and that if they can just have that part. Okay, so which part are we talking about? Are we talking about the one button thing or the Hakili thing? Because I feel like they're very different.
Yeah, I think there's negative reaction to both that's along similar lines, but
Mm.
I think the one that gets people more mad is the one button side of it.
Okay, so can you try to craft an argument for me that makes sense about why? Because I actually have some concerns about the one button thing, depending on how it plays out.
Mhm.
But the part where they're building something into your game where you don't need to download an add-on, which by the way is widely downloaded, it's like really, really popular, that just simply shows you what you are supposed to press in a game with probably more buttons you could actively be pressing at any given time. And I don't know if you guys have I experienced this a couple years ago with an ex-girlfriend trying to teach them how to play the game. And watching someone play WoW at max level for the first time, it is like so overwhelming. There are so many things going on. Forget talent builds or anything like that. Just like getting your default rotation down. You guys been playing WoW forever. You can play a new spec, haven't played it before. You're like going to lock in and figure that out really quick. You get it. You get a priority system. You get what procs are. You get all that stuff, right? Like new players don't get that. And even, man, if I'm just like going through that process with her, if she could have had, I didn't have her download Heckley, and honestly, I was probably stupid for not doing that because I think just having something show you, be like, oh, you press that after that, and like every single time you press, I don't even forget the name of it. When you get that brain freeze proc, you always ice lance after it. It's like a frost mage, for example. Like just understanding that interaction is like you just have that downloaded. You're good. Like okay, I understand. Like it's a really really good learning tool. I think even for people who would eventually want to be a high level player, they're not maybe going into the game like I have to be a high level player at every game, but like they could end up playing in your plus tens, right? These people, they not to say like plus tens are. That's making me think of like the MDI chat where it's like do not speak unless you're a high key player, and then it's like in parentheses plus tens and above or whatever. But like these people could be functioning members of the WoW society where they are doing content, and they started by learning with a tool that just taught them how their class worked and could, in its best case, expedite the learning process of like figuring out how WoW works, basically.
Yeah,
Now, right?
like how many pro cyclists do you think started with training wheels on their bikes? There are probably a lot of them, right? Like it's nice that those are available.
Mm-hmm.
That's it doesn't mean that you have to use them forever. And I would argue if you are a learning like if you are trying to learn and get good at WoW, getting off of the training wheels as soon as possible is good. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
there are limitations on what you can achieve, but like that's only for the people that care about that. And even for those people that can maybe help for a while, and then for everybody else, for people who don't care about it at all, right? Like if you want to play WoW with a friend and your friend wants to play WoW with you but doesn't want to, bother understanding the intricacies of when you're supposed to, disintegrate and when you're supposed to living flame or whatever, then this is a fantastic tool to help them either the one button or the one that lights it up, right? Whichever of those they choose is going to make their experience better. So I think it's good on that end. There are definitely some concerns that I think do have merit about it.
Okay.
One is I think that Dorky expressed this concern a little bit last week, which is if Blizzard are using this to then not have to address complexity concerns with specs that have them, that would be bad. I don't think they are or will, but I think that there's some, that's something that people are, at least of the criticism I've seen of this, that's one that I think has some logic behind it.
I mean, we've had this conversation before. There's like it's like an Asmongold talking point a couple years ago.
Right.
It was the extreme version of it, but it was like, what if every WoW class had 10 specs? Or sorry, what if every WoW spec had 10 buttons, right? And I mean, it did cause some interesting conversation, but I mean, it's really this simple. Like when you are dumbing down the overall WoW class, you are servicing the new player for sure. Like it is going to make a newer player be able to grasp WoW easier, definitely. And you being able to play some alts for sure. That is going to help. And then by keeping rotations complex where you feel like the level to master them is more challenging and also more rewarding, and the replayability is really good when there's a lot going on in your spec. And I don't mean like bullshit a lot going on, like Vivify Renewing Mist having like 30 interactions due to talents. That's not what I'm talking about, by the way. I just mean like the rotational complexity of like how classes play. That is servicing the longtime WoW player, the returning WoW player, the at least the gameplay focused player. And WoW is largely kept alive by the. I don't think WoW is a game that's thriving on bringing in new players. It's a game that's thriving on keeping old players around, right? So whenever you're trying to decide between do we service a new player or this player, that is where you're going with keep rotations complex or make them simple. I think this is my opinion, right? I think the game has options for easier gameplay, and maybe it's not super surprising that I'm biased towards the like keep the game challenging, because I think WoW PvE gameplay, if you can like figure out how this works, is like legit the most fun thing ever. And I think that would be less true if specs were made to just by default homogenize or make them easier, make it easier to understand, less complex. That would take away from people that have spent a lot of time getting good at this, right? Which I'm not saying you can't do, but that would happen, right? I think there are, like BM Hunter exists, Havoc DH I-Beam non-momentum variant for the past 8 years exists, right? Now healing, I don't think there's like an easy healer. There are some easier tanks for sure, as far as its core gameplay. But because this game isn't homogenized and classes don't feel very similar, which I think is very good, I think the fact that there are easier options makes me really pull away from the feedback of like, well, the fact that Blizzard's introducing this means they need to make classes easier. I don't think so. I think it's okay to have really complex classes as long as there's options and variety, especially in terms of difficulty. But introducing a tool, well, not introducing, there is a tool created because of this problem, and then integrating it into your game so people don't need to download add-ons. Because like the other complaint is, oh, well, people just have to like instantly download add-ons when they come. Okay, so like, what is the complaint against taking a really, really, really popular downloaded add-on and putting it in the game, right? It's a very, I think it should be a good thing, right? Unless you're a no add-ons purist, like just remove everything, which is among retail actual players, I think a really unpopular opinion. I don't know. What do you think about all of that?
Yeah, I think you're definitely right about the essence there. I will say, like, of the 39 specs in the game, could they maybe shift like 5 more of them from being high complexity to being medium complexity and have it be fine? Or like from medium to low? Maybe, right? Because like you look at the specs we have right now, like we really only have like what Rat, BM as the kind of emblematic super easy specs.
Yeah.
So I think there could be a little bit more. Like they could intentionally shift. Holy Priest is already kind of halfway there, but like really shift it even more towards being like, okay, this is the most accessible healer, right? Bear Druid, something like that. And then like a couple more DPS specs. Would that be good? Yeah, I think so. But I agree with you in general that the specs having the complexity that they do is something that enhances and doesn't detract from my experience. So I would be sad to see that go. And I think that would be true for a lot of like high-end WoW players. Okay, one other concern that I think does have some merit is if they make the one button thing too good. So if the penalty from the GCD and the combination of the GCD and however much worse it is than a good APL, right? Like however many just screw ups it has in the rotation. If that is too close, like imagine it's a 20% DPS loss. How many times would it be correct to have somebody taking a 20% DPS loss to move their cognitive load down to just pressing offensive CDs and defensive CDs, right? And like otherwise just moving their character? Like even in the mythic raid level, would there be a lot of guilds that would benefit from having their hunter that was doing the lines on bandit?
There are cutting edge
having something like that.
There are cutting edge guilds that if you were to pull them in secret and be like, there's a list of all their raiders and like put a check next to their name as if they just had to press one button with a 20% nerf, and like which then they perform, there would be some check marks on there. So I guess the concern is there pressure? Like,
yeah, will there be raid leaders that tell people who are not going to have more fun, who don't want to do this, hey, stop dying, use this one button rotation? You know, is that something that is in danger of happening? And I think that the answer to that is like it does depend on how they tune
There's
this. Yeah.
logic for that to happen. Because I mean,
Yeah.
you can just basically ask yourself this question, whether that's going to happen. Are there players that are like really bad? By this way, some people are going to like get offended by that anytime you mention that. There are people who are really bad at this game and also don't want to be good, and that's fine. By the way, I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen, but like, are there people that are like so bad at the game that get, you know, literally 0 percentile, 10 percentile, whatever? We did a potty T, like, I don't know when it released, but we recorded it a couple weeks ago before I left about how there was some person in a raid that was like bossing people around, but when they looked at their logs, they were actually just running around and pressing unbuffed ice lance the whole time, and that's the only button they pressed, right?
Right.
Wasn't that a thing? So like,
Yeah.
there are people like that are in heroic guilds, whatever. Those people exist, right? Every single and much worse and better, but still worse than the threshold here, where if they were to press the one button, they're basically already doing that. They're pressing ice lance. But if they just replace ice lance with this thing, they're going to do significantly better. So yeah, there will be some pressure of someone saying like, hey, maybe you should do this. I also think now, and I agree with your concern, by the way, like, if that's the case, if that happens where
Yeah.
like
Like it depends on the person, right? Because some people will want to, right? Like
correct,
if you're
yeah.
somebody who's in a normal or heroic raid situation and you want to just press the one button thing, that's great. It's more like if there's somebody who is having fun trying and then is like, no, you shouldn't try. You should use this instead because it will do better for you and for us. Like that's a really icky
Yeah, it sucks.
outcome. Yeah.
I think another concern I saw was like, man, I hate that this exists because there's gonna be all these bad players in my content. And it's like,
Newsflash, buddy.
yeah, those players are already there. Like they're already in your content. And I would imagine that if this feature is to matter at all, which is that they choose to use it, I would argue that almost all of those bad players would actually be better, and you would be less likely to identify them as a bad player because you're just simply reducing the coggy load from pressing all your buttons and doing all these things to just doing all these things. And they're going to obviously be way better at that because they're not doing both. And everyone's happy, right? That's the one that I'm least interested in, where I think is great, is the one button thing. I think it's fine. I think if you want to be the most charitable position of it, you just say it's an accessibility feature for someone maybe with disabilities to play this game, and in that it's kind of indefensibly good.
To the extent that it's doing that, it's pure upside. Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
That is just fantastic. Yeah.
But obviously it's available to everyone, so who knows exactly how it'll go down. But I think the Heckley thing is really good, but also not, I don't think either of us went down to that interview. If we were really excited about this interview, by the way. First of all, it's just really cool to be at Blizzard. It was a cool experience, but we were like, how are we going to get through like, to be honest with you, how are we going to get through the first 20% of this interview where we have to talk about this Heckley thing? Because we think it's cool for the game, but that's not what made us excited about this. It was about talking to Ian for 30 minutes like we did at the back half of this, and about the future of add-ons in the game. What is actually going to happen with this? And none of it was being released in 11.1.7 or even has any release date at all. It was more like, what are they willing to do? What are they trying to do? What is the goal? And that is what I think we found really interesting. And we basically got what confirmed, right? Like their goal is to remove computational fight solving weak auras from the game without removing any UI based weak auras.
Yeah, any like customization or that kind of thing. Yeah.
Anything that doesn't solve a fight for you, basically.
Yeah.
They want to have in-game DBM at some point. They basically want to, any really popular add-on that has proven to add value to the game, if people would like to interact with it, they accept for those specific weak auras, they want to bake into the game so it's not something you have to download, which I think addresses the problems of most, like, WoW is bad now and it's because of add-ons. I hate add-ons, right? Like that is a huge thing in the direction of that being a very good thing. Now, your opinion on those add-ons in particular could vary. Like, I think the damage meter is really interesting, right? Because like how MMOs have decided to deal with that through the years.
Yeah, I'm a fan of information accessibility, accepting that there is some cost to it, right? Like if we could go back to a world where nobody knew anything about WoW, there were some upsides to that, but I think that you can't go back. you can either have the information be like annoyingly accessible or not annoyingly accessible. And I think that in general, the not annoying side is better.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see them moving in that direction, even though I do concede there were some really nice things about like the classic experience in 2006 that are just never coming back because of that.
Small tangent. If you were to make, you're the game director of a new MMO and it's coming out in 2030, is there a damage meter in it built
Oh
in?
yeah, 100%.
Okay, so you value the information availability
Yeah.
more than the social anxiety and pressure that comes along with people's performance being outlined.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe there would be a good version of a game that doesn't have that, but I wouldn't be the right person to be working on that game because it's like
Yeah, that's
so
how I look at it
different
too.
than the kinds of way I play games. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yep, cool. Quick little tangent.
yeah, good one. Okay, so I mean, I think there's a lot of worry though from people that is fair, which is basically like when Blizzard messes with my add-ons, things get worse, not better, right? When Blizzard does these private aura things, experiments, like I
Oh,
can
yeah.
listen to their logic about why they're doing it, I can agree with them, and then it can make my game worse. And I'm now pressing a macro on FireAck and
Mm.
you know, losing a world first to people who figured out how to not have to press a macro on FireAck, right? And like those are not the kind of pleasant experiences that the theory behind private auras, which is the same theory, right? Like private auras are trying to solve a lot of the same things that
Correct.
the kind of
It was a
broader
failed solution that led to this being the case, I
right.
think.
And again, we haven't heard their exact final implementation of what they are going to do, but it sounds like their goal is to make it so that add-ons and weak auras being a subset of add-ons, like can't read the combat log anymore in combat, right? Like they can't do anything off of that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Which,
exactly. Because why
yeah,
would they need to? And you're like, oh, because we need details to work, and because we need
right.
this. Okay, well, wait. Well, if all of that's in the game,
Mhm.
you actually don't need that to work, right? You don't need to see the
Yeah.
combat log, which also is interesting because, like, could you still log? Which
Yeah. Do you
that's an
remember?
entire other thing.
Do you remember when there was briefly that time where people realized, like, oh man, the log writes fast enough that we can actually use this to get around private auras?
Yeah, that was yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
also so my one kind of answer or thought along those lines is when they announced private auras, I had a meeting that day with very, very smart add-on and weak aura people that were like, here's exactly how we're going to get around this. Like, even if they make 0 other changes, you can press a macro, you can do this, you can do that. If they nerf that, you can do this, you can do this, right? There's really, really smart people in the weak aura and add-on community. And while we're under NDA for that entire visit, obviously not the fact that we did the interview, because like you all can see that, that was mentioned to them off interview that I feel comfortable saying, which is like, I heavily advise them before ever releasing this, before even testing it on the PTR, hire these people as consultants and just make them break whatever you are coming out with to fix this over and over again until they can't do it before you even bother releasing it. Because it would be, if they didn't do that, it would just be endless. Exactly what you just said. You're
Right.
pressing a macro on a boss or figuring out a way not to do it, right? Like, and that's going to happen forever because people, realistically, like, I can tell you that we as a guild would love to do this stuff with no weak auras solving any of this shit for you because we love playing the game, right? But we also love winning and we don't like doing things worse than other people, which is why you have to use whatever's available to you. And the thought of like trying to do things natty while knowing that especially your competition is going to like do anything possible to not do it because you're used to doing it now. It's how you solve problems. It's how you have for years. Oh, how do we solve this? Well, here's how we could write a sweet weak aura to solve this. So like you're going to try to do that as best you can. It's your normal workflow. So I hope they do it right. I think it's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
Like when do, like, just top of your head, when do you think this is even available but functioning? Like I'm thinking like
13.2 or something.
yeah, like 2 expansions from now. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
gonna be a long process. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe shorter. I don't know, but probably not.
Maybe. I mean, it depends on how much they prioritize it. I think that it will be really good if they are humble about not launching it until it's ready to be launched, and like making sure that
That
they
was the
have.
impression he gave, right? I
Yeah,
think.
he did. I agree. I just, you know, I will continue to have skepticism about it until I see it work, because like the size of the undertaking is so massive. But the fact that they care about that, and they don't like the macro solutions to anything any more than we do. So as long as they do avoid us doing that kind of thing in the future, and a lot of it is mechanic design as well. We talked about this as well. I think that a lot of this did make it into the interview of like, if they are going to go to us not having weak aura solutions to mechanics, they actually have to design the mechanics like using a different toolkit, like just how we have been conditioned to solve mechanics by thinking about like, okay, how do we solve this with a systematic weak aura solution, right? How do we remove these elements of these failure points in our strategy, right? Like they also need to approach and counter design from a different lens, right? From a different perspective, now that they have to not like now that it's not going to get solved by weak auras.
The problem they encounter is how do we make a mechanic that's going to be really, really hard for Echo and Liquid, right? And a lot of the times in the past, it's like we have to do this crazy assignment thing, and it's like that's like one of the only ways to do it. And now, if they were to do that without a weak aura, there's been not many, but a few mechanics in WoW's history, some recently, where it's like it would have been just absolutely crazy. Like kind of like 3-second seeds on Tindral are a good example of like about how hard a mechanic can be while possible, but like not enough to get nerfed. I mean, it did eventually get nerfed to not happen in the last phase, but it was doable. And then it was changed. Like there are some things that would probably approach the difficulty of that were pretty trivialized because you could assign them. But like if you had to like natty organize Brood Twister, soaks, Venn diagrams, if you had to natty assign jailer bombs in P1, like the amount of wipes you're adding to a boss, you're like doubling it, especially because it's early. So
even like Mugsy cages, the fact that the assign does a good job of doing backups and everything for you automatically, man, like would you just go in there with a strategy that just had like a 20% failure rate because you might, because the way you'd fail on Mugsy is two people that are supposed to go to the same spot both get a cage, and like that's catastrophic, right?
My initial thought for that is that it wouldn't be that hard, because I think a solution to that is you make it only ever pick DPS, and you make it only require one DPS to kill within a suitable amount of time, and then porting doesn't matter. And as you just do that, the RNG is maybe if people have cooldowns or not.
But so if they change the mechanic,
then if they change it, but I mean that's what you're saying. Like if they know that these assignment things, they didn't make it a private aura on purpose. So like, if they know that these things are going to be solved by that, they would. I mean, hopefully, right? And like I said, if I'm going to be completely honest, I'm pretty sure the first tier they try to do this, there's probably going to be some rocky shit. Like there's probably going to be a mechanic that's fucking impossible, or they do a Gallywix where like they oversimplify everything because they're afraid of a few mechanics being too hard because of the loss of this. Like you could argue Gallywix is really easy because they thought the no dungeon journal, hey, figure out what this boss does, was just simply harder than it was, right? Maybe they are going to anticipate that those mechanics without weak auras are going to be more challenging. It could be more easy. Either way, it'd be weird. It's going to be a weird raid whenever this happens.
Yeah. I would actually not mind too much if they miss in the direction of it being a little too easy. I just do not want the Fyrakk intermission miss to happen again, where it's just like they create a private aura mechanic that is awful to play as a private aura, right? And like doesn't work, and like what that spot where you look at it and you're like, what were they thinking? Like how is this supposed to look? I can't understand how it was supposed to look in my head.
Any thoughts, Dorky?
All right, no thoughts from Dorky on that one either.
Yeah.
Let's do our Patreon question. Yeah. This one comes from Anonymous. It says, I know based on the previous pod, the Hall of Fame change was mentioned, but would it be possible to highlight just how badly the Hall of Fame has been managed this tier? With the goalpost moving mid-tier, many guilds have met the criteria before the deadline and just haven't been given the achievement, often through bugs. The guild ranked 316 on Raider.io has it. The guild rank 162 does not have it. In between, there's a random mix of haves and have-nots. To meet the criteria and not be awarded it when guilds ranked over 100 lower have been is a bit of a slap in the face with the amount of effort and dedication it takes.
Wait, what? I'm so confused. Why? Why is this happening?
This tier, they made Hall of Fame. They did the thing in the middle of the tier where it's like, oh, you have to kill Bandit and Mugsy. Yeah, because
people were buying Gallywix lockouts, and that was
has been the rollout of that has been less than bug free. It's been like there have been guilds that
So it's bugged. So there are
yeah,
people
yeah.
who don't have Hall of Fame because of a bug, not
Mhm.
because of like weird man. I mean, I'm sure it's weirdly managed, right? I
Yeah,
don't fault them too much for it requiring just the last boss going into this, because it hasn't been an issue
right.
until this tier, because like the end boss should be the really hard thing you need to gear for and kill all the other ones to do. So why would you ever do that? But this tier it's a thing. So I don't really fault them for just having it coded to not require more bosses. But I mean the bugs also, am I stupid for saying that like they're probably just gonna like award you the Hall of
So
Fame if you're bugged?
my understanding is that guilds have been ticketing it and getting it fixed. Um, and also there have been guilds that shouldn't have gotten it that have ticketed it and gotten it as well. So
Okay, yeah, but I don't care about that. And if you're another guild who has Hall of Fame, I wouldn't care about it either, man. That's the
yeah,
W. You cheated the system. Somehow you got Hall of Fame for free. W
yeah.
good.
I mean, if anything, taking credit for something that you didn't actually accomplish is very on theme for Gallywix. So I
Yeah,
respect it. This is a perfect tier for it. But yeah, that's my advice. If you are a guild that has done this, or that should have Hall of Fame but doesn't, ticket it. I've heard reports that they are fixing it. I think if I was Blizzard, I would just spend the time needed to actually manually go through on your own logs and on Raider.io all of the top 400 kills or whatever, and just verify that at least every guild that should have it does. I don't care too much about removing it from people that don't deserve it or anything like that. Like whatever. I also don't care too much about that. And then I think the big thing for Blizzard is like the trade off here. They had this trade off mid season of, do we let a couple people buy Gallywix and get Hall of Fame undeservingly, or do we go in and fix this? And I think they shouldn't have gone in and fixed it if it was going to cause this much trouble. Now, obviously, maybe they didn't know it was going to cause this much trouble. I'm sure that they didn't expect it to be quite as much of a pain as it has been, but in future is probably is one of those cases where it's like, okay, if there's something like this again, like probably just leave it for the season and fix it next season so that you can have it, tested or whatever, so that it works.
dude. Are
It's
you
funny though.
still playing WoW this season?
Yeah, dude, I've been playing a lot of WoW. I've been on a bunch of my characters trying to get all the 12 so I can buy my M plus dinar
Mm.
stuff. I don't know if I will continue to. So then the thing is, like, the way they've set it up this season, there's just like stuff to log in and do. Like next week, Horrific Visions come out. Then a couple weeks later, the Overcharged Delves come out, and we got to get our new Cersei's Circlets on everybody, right? The Titan disc belt thing.
Yeah, they've
So
definitely heavily invested into the back half of the season for sure,
yeah,
which is good for the people who do it. It's strange that I don't know if it has this. I could be totally fucking wrong here, but I don't know if it has made more people end of season players. But it is clearly servicing the people that were already doing that.
I will say I think I'd be pretty pissed off if zoning into a key felt like it did in some of the bad seasons, because like the amount of zoning into a key that I'm doing this season is pretty high, but I'm happy
What
because
do
it's
you?
like,
Oh,
oh,
you mean
poggers,
like the
like
dungeons are good
like
and Mythic Plus an enjoyable experience?
exactly like I have to go into Cinder Brumetery on like 8 characters or whatever that I want to get my M plus dinar on. Obviously, don't have to, but like I want to for the rewards, and I would probably be complaining about that more, and I'd be complaining about the alt unfriendliness and stuff more than I am, which I wish they made it more alt friendly. I will say, but like I actually the experience of like, oh, all right, my hunter needs Cinder Brew. Okay, let me log in and do a Cinder Brew 12 on my hunter. Like, okay, this is fun. I'm having fun. Like the reward system is pushing me to do fun things, so I'm not. I'm actually pretty happy with it, right? Like the fact that just doing keys this season is fun is carrying a lot of this. If that wasn't true, this would be substantially more frustrating for me. And the people in my guild for whom that's not true, which do exist, there are some people that just still don't like doing keys ever. There's more grumbling from them.
It's good for the Race World First players. Like, I went into a Discord channel the other day, like right when I got back. I was in the car, and I was like, I saw they were doing keys. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna like gauge their. Well, I was gonna hang out with them, but I just wanted to know like, how close are you guys to like having your guys geared for next patch? You know, like they just announced the turbo boost thing. Like, are you guys stressed out? It was like a big thing is we don't want burnout. You know, like you want to have people be prepared and spend time doing things, but if it ever means you lose one of your best players because they're tired of this shit, like you just made a really bad decision. So they were all like, no, we're super ahead. So it turns out Dinars are insanely fucking OP for
Oh yeah,
gearing.
for us, they're huge. Dude, there's this Reddit post, and like I do the thing I always do where I scroll down to the comments that don't have a lot of upvotes, and there were a lot of them that were, this is about Dinars, and they were like, yeah, of course, Max and Dratnos and Dorky don't like this version, but they're so out of touch, right? Like they're in the world first and 16th and whatever Dorky's 40 something to whatever guilds respectively. Like maybe it's not good for them, but it's good for us. It's like, no, it's actually the opposite of that. It's really fucking OP for us. The Dinars are so good, and I've got Galliwix kills on all the characters
So
that
now
need
the
Galliwix
exact
kills. It's free as hell.
now the exact same comments are going to exist, but in reverse, and they're
Well,
going to be like,
but I
well,
don't
of
want.
course, but of
I want them to buff
course,
it.
yeah, but of course they're fans of Dinar because they're happy and I'm not.
That's the tough part is like the version of Dinars that comes out is pretty good for me personally, and I really wish they would make it good for like AOTC
No,
raiders.
all of
Yeah.
our takes were like, I mean,
Yeah.
basically along the lines of if you're playing the game 3 months in, just give someone like a fucking mythic trinket, man.
Right.
It's all good.
But it's like now I feel kind of guilty because like it's really OP for me. It's like you ever like recommended something that you like to a friend and then they don't like it and you're like you kind of feel guilty for liking it. And like Dinars are kind of like that now, where it's like obviously like I've been publicly very vocal about wanting them to remove the restrictions about myth, but like I still feel bad about how good it is for me.
Yeah, no,
because,
I totally get what you're saying.
All the AOTC people and stuff are just so screwed by it.
Yeah, so and not everyone cares about the race, totally makes sense, but there's basically this like hidden deep down fear where like eventually the workload is going to become too much that like all the good players don't want to do this anymore and it's just going to be gone basically. And the Dinars specifically, and I'm sure they're going to get better, like most things in WoW, but it is a massive like their jobs are a lot easier. The time sink and farm was reduced a lot, which is great.
Yeah.
Also, I asked about sales. I asked, hey, are we getting more sales? Because I previously had mentioned on the podcast, like, oh, it's not going to really matter that much because, like, you're not going to. Okay, that was fucking wrong.
Yep.
That was really wrong. So it is very, very good for sales. We are selling things constantly, basically. Like, we don't like ask them why they're buying the boss, but it's like purely because they just want it unlocked for the Dinar stuff. So sales.
I mean, the amount of like 8 out of 8 runs or interest that we've had in 8 out of 8s has still been pretty high, but the amount of interest that we've had in can I do Bandit and Galliwix or Bandit and Mugsy has gone way through the roof. So sure, like clearly that's just interested in ours. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's really, really good for me personally and for you personally and Race to World First people personally and stuff. But I really hope that if they do this in future seasons, they will make it more generous for. I really think heroic raiders in particular. Like, man, it sucks that heroic raiders are getting the exact same set of options as like people who don't do any content whatsoever. I'm glad it's good for people who don't do any content whatsoever. I think it's a nice spot for them, but like I wish heroic raiders got a better deal out of this thing. One of the comments that really struck me that I saw that really resonated with me was like people always talk about how in for fun seasons it was allowed for them to do to give us more power, but now that it's a real season they can't. And they're like, well, it's a game, shouldn't it always be a for fun season, right? And I was like, yeah, hang on, that actually makes a lot of sense, right? Like if there's a feature, obviously cooking. Like obviously it's a little bit facetious, right? Because like when we say for fun season, we mean like a season that doesn't have the same progression structure.
It has no stakes. Yeah, but
rewards and stuff. Yeah.
They are right though in that in every season there's a season within a season. Like for example, the first 3 months are just absolutely and totally different than the last 3. So it's okay to have the last 3 be very different. And Blizzard, it kind of acknowledges this in their own design. We're getting fucking corruptions and we're apparently turbo boosting our gear, right? So like they get it. They get that it's different and you need to have more wild and wacky and crazy things. And is it really that wild and wacky and crazy to just give that mythic pluser their fucking mythic trinket so they don't have to find 20 people to raid with, which they absolutely despise? Also, I had a guy in my chat yesterday that was like, hey man, I'm a mythic pluser. I'm a fireman. I never have the same, I never work the same days every week. It is literally impossible for me to find a raiding guild. I can't do it. Right. But I play a lot of WoW. I only do Mythic Plus because I can do that whenever I want. So I'm tracking this totally fine. And he says, And he says, but like I play the game, I have like a really high IO score. Why does that like not include me for the best available loot in the game? And I'm like, you have a very fucking valid point. I get it. you are not wrong, man. Those are the people that I think that are the most vocally mad about this and are totally valid. So just give them their free trinket. Same thing. I'm glad they caved on the Mythic Plus skier too being added.
Yeah, that's
That
at
was
least
huge.
nice. It's one of those weird spots where it's like some specs are really happy or fine with it now. Like if you're an M pluser and you're somebody who just wants Pacemaker and Signet or something, like cool, you're actually chilling now. But then there's some specs where it's like, well, these are still a lot worse for me than the raid trinkets. And yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I think it would be a very pro first responder decision if Blizzard were to reduce the. I think they would be staking out a pro fireman and stuff, you know, position if it would be a good look. I'm just saying, it would be good politics.
Dorky, any thoughts on fires, any kind of natural disaster?
Dorky is firmly anti first responder, I believe. He's
my practice is a disaster. That's what.
Oh shit! You need a fireman, dude. Maybe I could call this guy. What's happening, Dorky? What's happening in there?
We're kind of blowing up.
Oh no! Oh no! Live blow up on the Potty C. And wait, do they play this weekend?
Yeah, we play Saturday.
Dude, chat, tune in this weekend to see Dorky's team blow up live on camera.
No, we're gonna pop off.
All right, never. Okay, that's just so that like their Mythic Plus team is just in a constant state of blowing up, and that's where they thrive.
Yeah, it's Saturday, and then hopefully Sunday. You can tune into Dorky's team on MDI.
Okay, about MDI.
Yep.
So now this is the point in the
feel free to turn off now
where you are leaving. We are going to talk about the MDI very briefly. For you guys who have not followed along, there's like first of all, the TGP is the MDI now. I might call it the TGP because that's just like what it is to me. But they've been doing that now for a few weekends. The third one is happening really soon, and then there's the globals. But they are doing this like banning classes thing. I have been gone for all of the MDI so far. I have not been in town. How has that gone? What are your thoughts?
I think it's been a good experiment to run. I think that they should tweak it for future seasons. Like I think that there are some problems with this specific implementation of a spec variety rule. That like one problem that it does is that you go into the Fridays and Saturdays, and there are teams that are like on the bubble of being able to make it to Sunday, and they can just play their mains on Friday or Saturday, dramatically increase the chances of making it to Sunday, but then they are screwed on Sunday because they show up and they have to play their alts on Sunday.
It's like you basically shouldn't even put them on the broadcast. They're like
right, and then
key levels below.
They're going to be getting farmed by the better teams that are also on the better comps. So that is something we haven't seen the absolute worst of that, but we saw it like in the Group A, for instance. Sunday was the two best teams on mains and then two other teams on alts, and like that was.
I mean, that's trash. That's
it was a little ugly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that like the intended outcome is to make it more interesting. But I mean, I don't even think. Are you even servicing the people who open the stream for 10 seconds and they're like, ew, same comp, and then they leave? Like, are those people happy and are staying? You know, is the viewership up?
Well, there are. I don't know anything about the viewership. I don't track that too closely. I just hear what people say, and I haven't heard anything about it this season. I think there has been good moments from people playing off meta stuff. Now, some of it's just like there are teams that have access to the meta comp and still weren't doing it, which was sick to watch. Like there was a team last weekend called Physical God Comp that just played a Physical God Comp. Although unfortunately for them, they played that comp all of Saturday and then they couldn't play it on Sunday because of the rule. So they ended up getting like sort of screwed by the spec variety rule, even though they were a team of off meta people. They had to play a worse comp on Sunday.
Dude,
so
if you're the team of off meta people finally making the TGP, man, did you pick the worst season of TGP to start doing this?
Yeah, it was a little unfortunate. But then there's been some dungeons where it's like just the spec balance is close enough that even when people have access to everything, they're playing Destro Lock and Meadery. There's actually a huge amount of variety in Priory where people are playing Ellie Shaman, Fire Mage, Arcane Mage, all in that dungeon, at high level keys. So like, but that's the sort of thing that can happen any season if the balance is close and good, which is always important. That the kind of main benefit we're getting is like the first half of the day ones. We've got a lot of people are playing their off meta comps, and those are pretty fun to watch. I mean, it's fun to watch, you know, like, oh, Wunderbar, which is the team that's basically Echo players, have come in and, you know, they're playing the, you know, the Bear Druid or whatever in these keys, and like that's fun. It's fun to see. It's fun to see stuff that's not just always the meta comp. But I think I would basically, if I was doing it, I would come back in next season. I'd be like, okay, we want a spec variety rule, but we probably don't want this exact one again.
Yeah, it was fine to experiment on.
Yeah.
I think that sounds right.
And I'm always pro experimentation as well. Like I think, especially in the way that M Plus works right now, we can't even do different affixes from week to week unless we wanted to do affixes in higher keys than there are affixes on the live servers, which comes with its own problems of like that would be weird. Not impossible.
Yeah,
it's something I've thought about proposing, but I don't think it would be good. Which means that like week to week, if you're trying to do a 4-week thing like the MDI is, and you want to have weekends be different from each other, which you do, and you can't do like different affixes, you know, you have very few tools now to make one weekend different from another, with only 8 dungeons in the pool, right? So I think doing something like spec variety is a really good way to attack like two big problems at once. But I would do it differently next season so that it to patch some of the like Sunday problems.
Okay. This weekend, as opposed to I think some of the other ones, there are like I think more than 2 teams that look really strong for qualifying. There's it's like the 2 that were the highest seed, which I think are Perplexed and Mandatory, right? And then also Dorky's team, which like I think like I mean he's here right now, but like didn't do a ton for like time trial stuff because like TGP is kind of weird. Like you don't really care about being really highly seeded because like there's no like upper bracket advantage or whatever. So like you just like kind of end up in the cup you end up in. And I guess the worst case scenario is you just end up in a cup with more than 2 good teams because of that. And it's harder to qualify maybe. But my question for you, Dranos, is who qualifies this weekend?
Surely Dorky's team does. But it's tough. Yeah, I mean, Dorky's, they kind of have drawn a tough group. I think both Group B and Group C were going to be really tough for his team to qualify out of. Not to pre-excuse his inevitable defeat, but I think Group A, they would have maybe had the best chance because...
Dude, this is extremely rigged, by the way. So we got seeded into Cup B initially, and we were like, oh, this is going to be free as hell. We're going to stomp the hell out of these idiots. But then we got put into Cup C, and we're basically playing in global finals already. We're going against Mandatory and Perplexed. Those
okay, but if you went into Group B, you would have been against Method and Miscount. Like that's
I mean, those guys are easy. But that aside, I mean...
Wow. Okay.
I mean, looking at the competition of Cup A and B, especially A, holy moly, there was 0 competition.
Yeah, A featured 07, which is like the Dr. J, Shelly, Roybin team. And I think they might do better at globals, but they definitely like almost threw their slot to a much lower seeded team in Group A. So that would have been the weekend you guys should have aimed to try and get.
Well, the thing is if Dorky, if you lose, it's like always the great thing in MDI. You're like free, you know, like the practice stops, and usually by the time you get to a cup, you're totally okay with that outcome, even though you want to win, like you're competitive. But it's like, dude, when those practice days are not what's happening tomorrow, holy shit, that's a good day.
Yeah, holy shit, dude, it is rough having to wake up to an alarm. It's like I'm back in fucking school. I haven't woken up to an alarm in so long, and these past 3 weeks, I've just been waking up to an alarm, and it is awful.
Yeah, I've like lived my life to minimize the amount of days that I'm waking up to an alarm. It's tough. Although dude, I also have to wake up to an alarm on MDI weekends.
This might be waking up really, is so good. This might be an old person take, and an anti-gamer take. But like, I mean, I've had the gamer sleep schedule that all of you guys can relate. I've woken up at 5 p.m. for years of my life, shit like that. I get it. But yo, when you don't use an alarm clock and you natty wake up to like the sun coming in your room, that goes crazy, dude. That is like the best wake up possible. I'm an advocate. I know that's like so. I like that is most of my life wouldn't have made any sense. And I actually like blacked out my windows on purpose so the sun could never wake me up earlier than I wanted it to. And now it's like, bro, you have to welcome the sun into your life.
Yeah, but if you're awake, you can't do that.
True. As we get older, right? Like we gotta, now that we're all in our like mid to late 30s or whatever, we gotta start adjusting the sleep schedules.
Who wins global finals, Dorky? Dranos, who?
I think
Probably
Wunderbar, which is the
us.
Echo team,
Oh.
are
They're looking crazy.
they're looking like old Echo.
Okay. What about you?
What about
Dorothy?
us?
You guys think you're gonna smoke
What
them or
about you?
Yeah,
let me tell
just
you-
watch this weekend. We're gonna pop
Nope.
it all off.
Fucking
Nobody
go.
on Wunderbar is doing a podcast while they should be practicing. Is all I'm saying.
Jesus.
Well, I mean, that's just how easy it is for me, you know.
Okay,
They're just
That's
that
good.
far ahead of the game. Yeah.
Built that
Yeah,
different.
I'm like tanking plus 20, hardest pull in the game. I'm calling kicks and stops right now while doing this podcast. Holy shit, so easy.
All right.
Dude,
fuck yeah.
Timber's gonna be so mad when he sees this video. I guess the only thing that's gonna save you is he's not gonna watch this podcast. So if nobody tells him about it, you're gonna be okay.
Yeah, he'll never. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, he says no fun allowed. Like, we're not allowed to joke around in our practice.
All right.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll be back next week with either newly freed or going to global finals, Dorky. We'll see you then.
Oh, there will definitely be a
Adios.
lot. All I'll say, there's going to be a lot to talk about next week on the podcast. Actually, I don't know if it's going to be podcast content, but there's going to be a lot going on over the weekend after this podcast.
It's
comes
going to be
out.
hype,
Yeah, that's for sure.
especially if you're into the race the world first.
All right.
Oh wow.
Oh, wow. Yep. All right. W. See you guys later.
Adios.